On the 4th of March, 2026, something happened over the skies of Tehran that had never happened in the history of aviation. An Israeli F-35 stealth fighter shot down an enemy jet in aerial combat. The first time in the 40-year history of the aircraft that it has ever killed a manned fighter. The Iranian pilot never saw it coming. He probably never knew the Adir was even there. That is what stealth does. That is what fifth-generation air power does. It does not give you a warning. It does not announce itself on radar. It simply arrives, and then the target is gone. Now Israel, the country that just proved its F-35s are untouchable over the most heavily defended airspace in the Middle East, has just approved $119 billion to buy 50 more of them. And the new commander of the Israeli Air Force, who took charge just 48 hours ago, already told the world where those jets are going if they are needed. But before we get into what this means for every country watching from the sidelines, let's talk about what Israel actually signed off on. On the 3rd of May 2026, Israel's Ministerial Committee on Procurement approved 2 brand new fighter jet squadrons. The first is a 4th squadron of the F-35I Adir, the Israeli version of Lockheed Martin's stealth fighter. The second is a 2nd squadron of the F-15IA, Boeing's most advanced version of the legendary F-15 Eagle family. Each squadron contains roughly 25 aircraft. That is 50 new jets in total, valued at a minimum of $6 billion just for those 2 squadrons alone. But these aircraft are not being bought in isolation. They are the opening move in what Israel is calling the Shield of Israel plan, a 350 billion shekel program that converts to approximately 119 billion US dollars. Committed over the next 10 years to rebuild, expand, and modernize the Israeli Defense Forces from the ground up. Defense Minister Israel Katz did not mince words about why. He said, and this is a direct quote, "The lessons of that campaign require us to keep pressing forward on force buildup, to ensure air superiority for decades to come." That campaign he is referring to is Operation Roaring Lion, the 40-day war Israel and the United States fought against Iran, beginning on the 28th of February 2026. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu added that a significant portion of this expanded budget will go toward producing munitions inside Israel, reducing the country's dependence on foreign suppliers. After watching the United States pivot its Patriot missile stockpiles toward the Iran campaign and away from allies like Ukraine, Israel's leadership clearly decided they cannot afford to be dependent on anyone else's supply chain in the middle of a war. Now here's the thing that makes this purchase different from any other country just buying more jets. Israel is not buying the F-35 based on a brochure. It is buying more of them because it just used them in the most contested airspace on the planet, and they performed beyond anything anyone expected. The F-35I Adir flew 1,500 sorties over Iran during Operation Roaring Lion, 1,500 missions over a country armed with Russian-made S-300 and S-400 surface-to-air missile systems, with a so-called Mosaic air defense network designed to operate autonomously even if command centers are destroyed. Iran built that network specifically to stop the kind of aircraft Israel was flying. And the result? Not a single F-35 was detected. Not one was scratched. Iran made no claim of downing one because there was nothing to claim. The F-35 did not just survive that environment, it dismantled it. The aircraft's sensor fusion technology, meaning its ability to simultaneously process radar data, infrared signals, and electronic warfare information in real time, allowed Israeli pilots to map Iranian radar sites, identify mobile launchers, and share targeting data with other aircraft and ground systems while remaining completely invisible. By the 2nd of March, just 2 days into the war, Israel declared air superiority over Tehran, a capital city defended by some of the most sophisticated anti-aircraft systems Russia has ever exported. And then, on the 4th of March, the moment that will be studied in every Air Force academy in the world for the next 50 years. An Israeli F-35I shot down an Iranian Yak-130 combat aircraft over the skies of Tehran. The first time in the 40-year history of the F-35 that any version of the jet has ever shot down a manned enemy aircraft in aerial combat. The Iranian pilot never saw it coming. The IDF's own announcement read, "This is the first shoot-down in history of a manned fighter aircraft by an F-35 Adir fighter jet." Israel's first aerial kill since 1985. That is the aircraft Israel just ordered 50 more of. Now, the F-35 gets all the attention, but the second half of this purchase is arguably just as important for what Israel is planning. The F-15IA is Israel's version of Boeing's F-15EX Eagle II, the most advanced non-stealth fighter jet in the world. And here is where the strategy gets interesting, because Israel is not buying it instead of the F-35. It is buying it alongside the F-35 for very specific reasons. The F-35 is a surgeon. It is stealthy, precise, and lethal in highly defended airspace. But it carries a relatively small weapons load inside its internal bays to preserve its stealth profile. The F-15IA is the heavy. It can carry up to 12 air-to-air missiles simultaneously. It is compatible with hypersonic weapons. It has a combat radius that extends deep into any regional theater. It carries massive bomb loads for sustained strike campaigns against hardened targets. Think of it this way. The F-35 goes in first, invisible, and dismantles the enemy's ability to defend itself. It destroys radar systems, command centers, and air defense batteries. It clears the sky. And then the F-15IA follows, loaded with everything it can carry to finish the job against whatever hardened high-value targets remain. The two aircraft are not competing. They are completing each other. One is the lockpick, the other is the battering ram. When these new squadrons are fully delivered, Israel will operate 100 F-35I stealth fighters and 50 F-15IA heavy strikers. A combined force that no country in the Middle East, and very few countries anywhere in the world, can come close to matching. But here's the part that goes beyond hardware, because this purchase is not just about jets. It is about a message. Israel's brand new Air Force commander, Major General Omer Tischler, took command on the 5th of May 2026, just 48 hours before this script was written. His first public statement in the role was not about peace negotiations. It was not about diplomatic solutions. He stood at the Tel Nof Air Base and said, "We are closely monitoring what is happening in Iran and are prepared to take the entire Air Force eastward if we are required to do so." The entire Air Force. Eastward. Those words, combined with a $119 billion military expansion, paint a very clear picture of what Israel is preparing for. Iran is down but not out. A ceasefire has been in place since the 8th of April, 2026, but the US Navy still maintains a blockade of Iranian ports. Iran has been firing drone and missile attacks at the United Arab Emirates. Hezbollah continues launching rockets at Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. The region has not settled, it has simply paused. And Israel's leadership, after watching the United States negotiate ceasefires that excluded Lebanon, after watching J.D. Vance describe ending military aid as a point of pride, after watching ally support become conditional and unpredictable, has decided it cannot afford to wait on anyone else. Not for weapons, not for ammunition, not for political cover. The $119 billion plan is Israel's answer to every scenario where it finds itself alone. And here's why this matters well beyond Israel's borders. Before the Iran war, there was a serious debate among military analysts about whether the F-35 was worth its cost. Critics called it overpriced, overcomplicated, and overhyped. They said stealth technology was overstated against modern radar systems. They said the aircraft's critics in the procurement community had valid points about the program's cost overruns and delivery delays. Israel just ended that debate. 1,500 combat sorties over Iran, 0 losses, air superiority over Tehran in 48 hours. The world's first F-35 air-to-air kill in history. The United States Air Force is now actively redesigning how its own F-35s carry fuel, taking direct lessons from how the Israeli version extended its range using conformal fuel tanks to reach targets over 1,600 kilometers away without relying on tanker support. The US is learning from Israel how to use its own aircraft. That is what happens when a country spends 4 decades making its pilots the best in the world, building its own electronic warfare upgrades onto American platforms, and fighting real wars instead of simulated exercises. Israel is not just buying more F-35s, it is buying more of the platform it has already mastered, and buying enough of them to sustain prolonged air campaigns across multiple theaters simultaneously for a decade or more. without asking anyone for permission or resupply. So what does all of this add up to? $119 billion. 100 F-35 stealth fighters. 50 F-15IA heavy strikers. A new Air Force commander already pointing his force east. And a prime minister who just told the world that Israel will produce its own munitions so it never has to wait on a phone call from Washington. The countries that spent the last 40 days rebuilding from the wreckage of Operation Roaring Lion are now watching Israel make itself more powerful than it was before the war started. That is not a warning. That is a statement of intent, written in tens of billions of dollars and two of the most lethal aircraft ever built. Israel did not just buy something. It bought the kind of something that changes the math for every conflict in this region for the next 20 years. If you want to understand what comes next, because the ceasefire is fragile, Lebanon is still burning, and Iran has not given up, subscribe to this channel. The next video is already coming, and you will not want to miss it.